Chances are, many of you have heard of Stoicism. Perhaps you picture a detached, emotionless sage, someone who never smiles or cries. Well, today we're going to bust those stereotypes wide open. Get ready to discover why Stoics were actually not emotionless automatons, and why their philosophy isn't about suppressing feelings. We're about to explore 5 of the most common myths that will completely change how you view this ancient philosophy. But first, what exactly is Stoicism? It's an ancient Greek philosophy that emerged around 300 BCE. It teaches us how to live a good, meaningful life. Think of it as a practical guide to finding calm, wisdom, and inner strength. Stoicism isn't a religion. Rather, it's a set of practical principles that help us navigate life's challenges. Let's start with the first and perhaps most persistent misconception. Myth number 1. Stoics are emotionless robots, completely devoid of feelings. Imagine someone who never experiences joy, sadness, or anger. That's how many picture a true Stoic, a detached, impassive figure, observing the world with a stony face. But this is a profoundly mistaken belief that completely distorts the true essence of this ancient philosophy. In reality, Stoics understood perfectly well that emotions are an integral part of human nature. They didn't advocate for suppressing or eliminating them. That would be impossible and even detrimental. Instead, Stoics taught us to recognize our emotions, understand their source, and most importantly, manage them without letting them control our lives. This is the key. They made a distinction between what they called initial impressions, our first spontaneous reaction to an event, and judgments, how we interpret those impressions. Let's take a common example. You're stuck in terrible traffic. Your first reaction is annoyance or even anger. A Stoic wouldn't pretend not to feel it. They would acknowledge that irritation, but instead of letting it escalate into rage, they would ask themselves, can I change anything about this situation? Is this traffic jam within my control? The answer is obviously no. And then the Stoic focuses on what can be controlled, their reaction, their attitude, their inner peace. Perhaps they'd use that time to listen to an audiobook or simply to reflect. Thus, Stoicism isn't about becoming heartless. It's about becoming the master of your emotions, not their slave. It's about the ability to maintain clarity of mind and rationality, even in the most turbulent emotional states. Stoics were realists. They knew that anger, fear, and sadness would arise. But they learned not to let these emotions dictate their actions or destroy their inner peace. Let's tackle the second common myth, that Stoicism is all about grim, agonizing endurance and constant despondency. Some people envision a Stoic's life as merely a relentless series of sufferings that one must actively seek out and conquer to be considered a true philosopher. They believe Stoics deliberately deny themselves all pleasures, live in stark Spartan conditions, and almost welcome pain as an essential part of their journey. This perception, too, is far from accurate. Stoicism teaches us to embrace the inevitable and cultivate resilience in the face of difficulties, rather than actively seeking suffering for suffering's sake. The goal isn't to be miserable, but to be prepared for life's inevitable curveballs and challenges. This is a crucial distinction. Stoics were not masochists. They valued joy, savoured good food, cherished friendship, and appreciated the beauty of the world. But they also understood that all these blessings are transient and can be lost. This is precisely why they practiced premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils, which involves contemplating possible negative scenarios. This isn't about seeking out suffering, but about preparing for it. It helps us avoid being caught off guard when things inevitably go wrong. Consider, for instance, a situation where you fall ill. A Stoic acknowledges the pain, the discomfort. They won't pretend to be perfectly fine or somehow welcome the illness, but they won't let it break their spirit, nor will they sink into self-pity or despair. Instead, they will focus on what is within their control, following our doctor's recommendations, getting rest, and maintaining a calm mind. This isn't about actively seeking pain. It's about cultivating an inner strength that allows us to remain steady and balanced regardless of external circumstances. Resilience isn't about being immune or insensitive to pain, but about refusing to let pain dictate your actions or state of mind. It's about the ability to navigate difficulties without having your inner harmony shattered. Stoics aimed for a flourishing and meaningful life, but recognized that trials and challenges are an inevitable part of that journey, and they taught how to face these challenges with dignity and grace. Now let's tackle myth number 3, that Stoics are fatalists. Many mistakenly believe that Stoics passively resign themselves to everything that happens in life simply because it's meant to be and nothing can be changed. The reasoning goes, why bother acting if everything is predetermined anyway? This is a common misconception that transforms an active and practical philosophy into passive inaction. In reality, Stoicism teaches us to clearly distinguish between what is within our power, within our control, and what is outside our power, beyond our control. This is a central principle known as the dichotomy of control. We cannot control the weather, other people's opinions, the outcome of a lottery, or even some illnesses, but we can control our thoughts, our actions, our reactions, and our beliefs. This is precisely where the active stance of a Stoic becomes evident. Where we have control, we must act as effectively and virtuously as possible. Let me give you an example. Imagine you're preparing for an important exam. A fatalist might say, if I'm meant to pass, I'll pass, and if not, I won't. Why bother putting in the effort? A Stoic, however, acts differently. They would study diligently, review the material, get plenty of sleep. In short, do everything within their power to prepare as thoroughly as possible. However, if despite all these efforts they still receive a low grade, perhaps due to illness on the day of the exam or an unfair question, they wouldn't descend into despair. They would accept the outcome, knowing they did everything they could, and the result was beyond their control. This is not passive resignation, but a wise allocation of effort and energy. A Stoic acts proactively, putting in maximum effort where they can influence a situation, yet releasing attachment to results that are beyond their control. This approach helps to avoid unnecessary anxieties and disappointments, while simultaneously maintaining motivation to act. Fatalism is inaction. Stoicism is rational and purposeful action combined with a calm acceptance of what cannot be changed. The fourth myth suggests that Stoicism is a selfish philosophy, focusing solely on personal tranquility and ignoring society. Some believe that by concentrating on their inner world and self-improvement, a Stoic becomes indifferent to the problems of others and withdraws from public life. This notion is not only incorrect but also utterly contrary to the very spirit of Stoic philosophy. In reality, Stoics actively advocated for public service, believing that a virtuous life was impossible without participation in the life of the polis, that is, the city-state, or in modern terms, society. They championed the idea of cosmopolitanism, seeing all of us as citizens of the world, parts of one vast human family. A true Stoic recognises their responsibility to others. Many prominent Stoics were active public figures. Take Marcus Aurelius, for instance. He wasn't just a philosopher. He was the emperor of the Roman Empire, bearing immense responsibility for millions. Seneca served as an imperial advisor and a notable politician. These individuals didn't shy away from the world. On the contrary, they immersed themselves in it, striving to contribute positively. Stoicism teaches that our personal well-being is intrinsically linked to the well-being of those around us. Cultivating virtues like justice, compassion, benevolence, and generosity is an integral part of the Stoic path. A Stoic doesn't merely seek personal tranquility, but strives to become the best version of themselves, and this improved self naturally extends care to others. This isn't selfishness. It's a profound understanding of the interconnectedness of all humanity. Stoics believed we are born for society, and our nature is expressed through mutual aid. They taught that we should treat others as we treat ourselves, and that virtue holds no meaning if it doesn't serve the common good. Thus, Stoicism is a philosophy that actively encourages social engagement and compassion, rather than detachment. And finally, myth number 5. that Stoicism is a strict dogmatic religion or a rigid set of rules that must be blindly followed without question. Some perceive this philosophy as an immutable code of laws that leaves no room for individuality, personal interpretation, or critical thinking. This is perhaps one of the most unfortunate misconceptions, because it completely ignores the practical and flexible nature of Stoicism. Stoicism is not a religion, nor is it a dogma. Instead, it's a collection of practical tools, principles, and exercises that each person can adapt to their own life and circumstances. It doesn't demand blind faith or rigid adherence to every precept without understanding. On the contrary, Stoicism actively encourages reflection, self-examination, and the independent application of its principles. You don't have to be a perfect Stoic, adhering to every single word of the ancient philosophers. The idea is to take the insights and methods from this teaching that resonate with you, those that help you better navigate life's challenges, develop character, and find inner peace. It's a highly adaptable system that has evolved over centuries and remains relevant precisely because of its flexibility. For instance, practices like memento mori, meditation on death, or premeditatio malorum, contemplating misfortunes, aren't rigid rituals, but rather mental exercises designed to help you appreciate the present and develop resilience. You can practice them in a way that suits you best. Stoicism doesn't provide ready-made answers to all of life's questions, but it offers a powerful framework for seeking those answers, for cultivating your own reason and virtue. It teaches you to think critically, to question your beliefs, and to continuously work on yourself. It's a philosophy that empowers you to become an active student of your own life, rather than merely a passive consumer of dogmas. It calls for constant self-improvement and exploration, ultimately making you the author of your own unique Stoic journey. So, there you have it. 5 key myths debunked. What's truly surprising is that Stoics were far from being emotionless statues. They were profoundly emotional individuals who simply mastered the art of managing their feelings. They don't seek suffering, but they are equipped to endure it with resilience. They aren't fatalists, but proactive individuals who understand their boundaries. And far from being selfish, they advocate for serving society, offering practical tools for a meaningful and virtuous life. Quite a revelation, isn't it? We hope this video has offered a fresh perspective on Stoicism and its incredible relevance for today. It's not a philosophy reserved for a select few, but a practical guide for each and every one of us. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next uploads. Which of these myths surprised you the most? Or perhaps you have your own questions about Stoicism? Be sure to share them in the comments below.